Death is the only rule that nature never breaks. All living things are born, age, and die. It has always been this way from the first single-celled organisms that appeared 3,500,000,000 years ago to you and me. Death is inevitable, inexorable, and absolute. At least that is what we thought until we began to look more closely at certain creatures living on our planet. It turned out that in nature, there are animals that have found loopholes in the very fundamental law of biology. Some of them know how to literally rise from the dead, others can stop aging, and still others can survive in conditions that would guaranteed kill any other living creature on Earth. These are 5 stories about animals that looked death in the face and said, "No thanks, not today." The first animal on our list is a creature that scientists call immortal without exaggeration. Its name is Turritopsis dohrnii, or the immortal jellyfish. This tiny creature the size of a pinky nail is transparent, almost invisible in the water, and lives in warm seas all over the world. If you saw it in the ocean, you would most likely not even notice it, as it is so unremarkable. But inside this tiny body, a process occurs that turns everything we know about biology upside down. To understand the trick, you first need to understand the life cycle of an ordinary jellyfish. All jellyfish pass through 2 stages, the polyp and the jellyfish itself. A polyp is a small plant-like creature attached to the bottom. Over time, the polyp buds off a jellyfish, a free-swimming adult form that reproduces, ages, and dies. This is the standard scheme. Childhood, adulthood, death. Period. Turritopsis dohrnii plays by the same rules exactly until the moment it is supposed to die. When the immortal jellyfish grows old, gets sick, or is subjected to stress, instead of dying, it does something unimaginable. It returns to the polyp stage. The adult jellyfish sinks to the bottom, its body contracts, its tentacles retract, its cells are reprogrammed, and after a few days, a young polyp sits on the bottom, ready to start life over. It is as if an elderly person could at will turn back into an infant and live life from scratch. The process behind this transformation is called transdifferentiation. Its essence is that the specialized cells of an adult organism, muscle, nerve, digestive, lose their specialization and turn back into stem cells, from which cells of a new young organism are then formed. This violates one of the main dogmas of biology. It was believed that cell differentiation is an irreversible process, that a nerve cell cannot become a muscle cell, and a muscle cell cannot become a stem cell. Turritopsis dohrnii proved that this is not so. It knows how to rewind the biological clock not metaphorically, but literally at the level of every cell in its body. Theoretically, this cycle can be repeated indefinitely. The jellyfish ages and turns into a polyp. From the polyp, a new jellyfish is born. That one ages, turns into a polyp again, and so on to infinity. Of course, in practice, immortal jellyfish do die. They are eaten by predators, they die from diseases, or they are washed ashore. But they never die of old age. They have found a way to reset their biological age, and no other animal on Earth can do anything like it. When scientists say immortal jellyfish, they are not joking or exaggerating. This is the only animal known to science that has literally defeated aging. Researchers from universities in Spain and Japan have decoded the genome of Turritopsis dohrnii and discovered that it has unique mutations in genes related to DNA replication and the protection of telomeres, the end sections of chromosomes, the shortening of which is considered one of the main causes of aging in all other animals. In the immortal jellyfish, these genes work differently. They allow cells to divide without loss of genetic information, which in theory gives the possibility of infinite renewal. This discovery caused a flurry of interest from medicine. If we understand exactly how the jellyfish resets its cells, we might be able to apply this mechanism to human cells. Not for immortality, but perhaps for the treatment of age-related diseases, cancer, dementia, and cardiovascular diseases. There is another fact about the immortal jellyfish that sounds like the plot of a science fiction movie. It is precisely because of its ability to rejuvenate that Turritopsis dohrnii is quietly and imperceptibly taking over the world's oceans. Originally living only in the Mediterranean Sea, it has settled in all the oceans of the planet. It is found off the coasts of Japan, Panama, Florida, Spain, and Australia. The ballast water of ships carries polyps all over the world, and in every new port, they attach to the bottom and start a new colony. Scientists call this a silent invasion. Immortal jellyfish are gradually filling all warm seas, and it is impossible to stop them. A creature that does not die of old age and reproduces in any conditions is an ideal colonizer. In 100 years, Turritopsis dohrnii may become one of the most common species in the world's oceans and one of the most resilient organisms to ever exist on this planet. The second animal is the complete opposite of the jellyfish. If Turritopsis dohrnii avoids death by rewinding time, then our next hero defeats death simply by refusing to age. Its name is the naked mole rat, Heterocephalus glaber, and it is perhaps the ugliest mammal on the planet. Imagine a pink wrinkled sausage the size of a mouse with bulging eyes and two huge incisors sticking out of its mouth. The naked mole rat lives in underground colonies in East Africa, digs tunnels, and feeds on plant roots. At first glance, it is a creature not worth the slightest attention, but biologists consider it one of the most amazing animals on Earth. And here is why. An ordinary mouse lives 2 to 3 years. A naked mole rat lives up to 37 years. This is 10 to 12 times longer than expected for a rodent of its size. If a person lived as long relative to their size, our lifespan would be about 800 years. But it is not just about lifespan. It is about how the naked mole rat ages, and it essentially does not age at all. Studies have shown that the probability of death does not increase with age for the mole rat. This is a phenomenon that violates the Gompertz-Makhem law, a fundamental statistical law of aging to which all other mammals are subject. In humans, mice, elephants, and whales, the probability of dying grows exponentially with age. The older you are, the higher the chance that the next year will be your last. For the naked mole rat, this curve is flat. A 30-year-old mole rat dies with the same probability as a 5-year-old. It does not age in the usual sense. It just lives until something external kills it. In addition, the naked mole rat practically never gets cancer. Over decades of observation of thousands of individuals in laboratories, cancer cases have been recorded literally as isolated incidents. For comparison, laboratory mice get cancer almost universally. The mole rat's secret is a special protein, high molecular weight hyaluronic acid, which fills the space between its cells and does not allow them to divide uncontrollably. It is as if every cell has a built-in brake preventing it from turning into a cancer cell. When scientists removed this protein from mole rat cells in the laboratory, they began to form tumors. This is confirmation that hyaluronic acid is the key protective mechanism. There is another striking feature. The naked mole rat is capable of surviving without oxygen for up to 18 minutes. For a mammal, this is an unthinkable period. The human brain begins to die after 4 to 5 minutes without oxygen. The mole rat copes with this by switching its metabolism from normal oxygen-based to an emergency mode, in which cells receive energy from fructose, like plant cells. This is the only known mammal capable of such a trick. To this, it should be added that the naked mole rat is one of 2 mammals on Earth living on the principle of eusociality, like ants or bees. In each colony, there is one breeding female, the queen, and dozens of workers who dig tunnels, gather food, and protect the colony, but never reproduce themselves. When the queen dies, a brutal struggle for the throne begins among the females, sometimes to the death. The winner becomes the new queen, and her body literally transforms. Her spine elongates to accommodate more offspring. Her hormonal background is restructured. This social structure is possibly related to the phenomenon of non-aging. In conditions where only one individual reproduces, evolution is interested in her living as long as possible. Therefore, selection works against the genes of aging. In the conditions of underground tunnels where oxygen is often scarce, this skill is a matter of survival. But for science, it is something more. Proof that mammals possess hidden biochemical capabilities that are usually not used, but can be activated in extreme conditions. The third animal, and possibly the most incredible, is the tardigrade, or as it is affectionately called by the people, the water bear. This microscopic creature, less than 1 millimeter long, looks like a plump, 8-legged teddy bear. It lives practically everywhere, in oceans, lakes, forest floor, mosses, and lichens. The tardigrade is not immortal in the sense that the jellyfish is immortal. It does not stop aging like the mole rat. It does something else. It survives in conditions that would kill any other creature. Absolutely any, including what is considered incompatible with life in principle. Here is an incomplete list of what a tardigrade is capable of surviving. Temperatures from -272 degrees Celsius, almost absolute zero, to +150. Pressure of 6,000 atmospheres, 6 times more than at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Radiation 1,000 times exceeding the lethal dose for a human. The total vacuum of outer space. Decades without water, years without food. In 2007, tardigrades became the first animals to survive in open space. They were taken into orbit on board the European satellite Photon M3, exposed to vacuum and direct ultraviolet radiation from the sun. After returning to Earth, some of them were alive and even capable of reproduction. How is this possible? The secret of the tardigrade is a state called cryptobiosis. When conditions become unbearable, the tardigrade retracts its legs, curls up into a small barrel called a tun, and almost completely dehydrates. The water content in its body drops from 85% to less than 3%. Metabolism slows down to immeasurable values, essentially drops to 0. The tardigrade is not alive in the usual sense, but it is not dead either. It is in an intermediate state, in a biological limbo between life and death, in which it can remain for decades. When conditions improve, a drop of water is enough. The tardigrade wakes up within a few minutes and continues to live as if nothing had happened. In 2019, an event occurred that brought tardigrades to the front pages of the world media. The Israeli lunar probe Bereshit crashed while landing on the moon. On board, the probe was a library containing DNA samples and several thousand dehydrated tardigrades. After the crash, the question arose: did they survive? Scientists believe that with a high probability, yes. Tardigrades in the tun state are capable of surviving an impact of such force and the vacuum of the lunar surface. This means that right now on the surface of the moon, there are possibly living, or rather, cryptobiotic, tardigrades. Formally, they are waiting for water, which is not on the moon, and will only wake up if they are returned to Earth and have water dropped on them. But the very fact that an Earth animal likely survived the crash of a spacecraft on another celestial body is something from the realm of science fiction become reality. Scientists have decoded the tardigrade genome and discovered several unique proteins that are not in any other animal. One of them, DSUP, or damage suppressor, is capable of protecting chromosomes from radiation destruction. When researchers transplanted the gene encoding this protein into human cells in the laboratory, they became 40% more resistant to X-ray radiation. 40% is a colossal figure. If we ever fly to Mars, we will need protection from cosmic radiation, and perhaps the key to it will be given by a tiny water bear 0.5 millimeter long. The fourth animal is the wood frog, Lithobates sylvaticus, living in North America. Every winter, this frog does something that makes doctors' jaws drop. It freezes. It does not hibernate. It does not hide in a warm burrow. It literally freezes. Up to 65% of the water in its body turns into ice. The heart stops, blood circulation ceases, breathing is zero, brain activity is zero. By all clinical parameters, the frog is dead. It lies under the leaves, hard as a stone, covered in frost. And if you found it in the forest in winter, you would think it was dead, because it is dead, at least by any standards applicable to other vertebrates. And in the spring, it thaws. The heart begins to beat, first slowly, then faster. The blood, which turned into an icy slush, flows through the vessels again. The eyes open, the legs begin to move. A few hours after thawing, the frog jumps to the nearest pond as if nothing had happened. It spent several months in a state indistinguishable from death and returned. This is not a metaphor. This is not a literary exaggeration. This is a scientific fact documented by dozens of studies. The frog's survival mechanism is based on two key adaptations. First is the massive accumulation of glucose. When body temperature begins to drop, the frog's liver releases a huge amount of sugar into the blood. The concentration of glucose in the blood increases dozens of times, reaching levels that would kill any other vertebrate with a diabetic coma. But for the frog, this sugar is anti-freeze. It penetrates the cells and prevents the formation of intracellular ice crystals that would rupture the cell membranes. Ice forms only in the extracellular space outside the cells, but not inside them. The cells dehydrate and shrivel, but remain whole. The second adaptation involves special nucleating proteins that control the freezing process, causing the ice to form slowly and evenly rather than in the form of destructive sharp crystals. For medicine, the wood frog is a living instruction on how to preserve organs. The main problem in transplantology is that organs cannot be stored for long. A heart lives outside the body for 4 to 6 hours, a kidney for up to 36 hours. If we learn to freeze organs as the frog does, without damaging the cells and with the possibility of full recovery upon thawing, it would revolutionize medicine. Thousands of people die every year without waiting for a suitable organ simply because the organ could not be delivered in time. A frog freezing every winter in a Canadian forest could ultimately save millions of human lives. The fifth and final animal is the Greenland shark, Somniosus microcephalus. This is the longest-lived vertebrate on the planet, and the scale of its life forces a reconsideration of the very concept of time. In 2016, a group of Danish scientists, led by Julius Nielsen, published a study that shocked the scientific world. Using radiocarbon analysis of the eye lenses, the only tissue that forms at birth and is not renewed during life, they determined the age of several caught Greenland sharks. The results were staggering. The oldest individual, a female just over 5 meters long, turned out to be approximately 392 years old, plus or minus 120 years of margin of error, but even at the lower limit, it is more than 270 years. This shark was born around the 1620s. When Galileo was looking through a telescope, the Pilgrims were sailing to America on the Mayflower, and Shakespeare had been dead for only a few years, and she is still alive today, swimming, hunting, eating. The Greenland shark is a creature from another world. It lives in the icy waters of the Arctic at depths of up to 2.5 kilometers, where the water temperature barely exceeds 0 degrees. It moves at a speed of about 1 kilometer per hour. It is one of the slowest sharks in the world. It grows 1 centimeter per year. It reaches sexual maturity at the age of approximately 150 years. Think about it. 150 years is the age at which the Greenland shark can reproduce for the first time. By this point, human civilization has time to survive several wars, revolutions, and technological upheavals, while the shark is only just becoming an adult. There is something almost mystical in an existence that lasts for centuries. A Greenland shark born in the 17th century was a witness, albeit a silent one in the icy darkness of the Arctic depths, to the entire history of modern civilization. When she was young, Newton had not yet formulated the law of universal gravitation. When she reached her teenage years, the War of Independence was going on in America. When she entered maturity, the First World War began. She swam in the same waters when the Titanic went down. She was there when the first man flew into space, and she is swimming there still, slowly, almost motionlessly, in absolute darkness under the polar ice, carrying in her body biochemical secrets that we are only beginning to decipher. Most Greenland sharks are blind. Their eyes are affected by a specific parasite, a copepod crustacean that attaches to the cornea and gradually destroys vision. No, it does not bother the shark. In the pitch darkness of the Arctic depths, vision is useless, and she relies on smell and electroreception, the ability to detect weak electric fields generated by the muscles of other animals. Blind, slow, living in a world without light, and yet immortal as far as we can tell. Not a single caught Greenland shark has shown signs of age-related degradation of organs. Their hearts, liver, and brain work equally well regardless of how many decades or centuries they have lived. The secret of her longevity is a subject of active research. The icy water of the Arctic slows down metabolism to the limit. All biochemical processes in the shark's body proceed several times slower than in tropical fish. Slow metabolism means slow accumulation of DNA damage, slow shortening of telomeres, and slow aging. The muscle tissue of the Greenland shark contains high concentrations of trimethylamine N-oxide, a substance that stabilizes proteins at high pressure and low temperatures and presumably protects cells from age-related damage. But there is no full explanation. 400 years of life is too much even for the slowest metabolism. There is something else, something we do not yet understand, that allows this shark to exist for centuries, into which entire eras of human history fit. 5 animals, 5 ways to break the rules of death. A jellyfish that rewinds time. A mole rat that does not age. A tardigrade that survives everywhere. A frog that freezes and rises again. A shark that lives 400 years. Each of them is walking or swimming or crawling proof that death is not such an absolute law as we are used to considering it. Nature has found not one but many loopholes, and each of them opens doors for science whose existence we did not suspect until recently. Tardigrade proteins that protect against radiation, the mole rat's hyaluronic acid that blocks cancer, the frog's glucose antifreeze that can save millions of lives, jellyfish genes that reset the cellular clock, the shark's slow metabolism that stretches life for centuries. All this is not fiction. It is biology, real, proven, and published in peer-reviewed journals. And perhaps the most amazing thing about these 5 stories is not that these animals exist, but that we found them only now. The immortal jellyfish was described in 1883, but its ability to transdifferentiation was discovered only in 1996. The naked mole rat was studied for decades as an exotic curiosity before they realized it does not obey Gompertz's law. The tardigrade has been known since the 18th century, but its genome was decoded only in 2015. The age of the Greenland shark was established only in 2016. All these creatures lived next to us, literally under our feet, in our lakes, in our oceans. And for centuries we did not notice that they violate the most fundamental law of life. How many more such creatures are waiting for us to finally pay attention to them? How many more loopholes has nature hidden in the most inconspicuous organisms on the planet? We do not know. But one thing we know for sure: death is not such an inevitability. At least, if you are a jellyfish or a mole rat or a tiny water bear lying right now in the moss in your yard, ready to outlive you and your grandchildren and possibly our entire civilization. Nature has spent 3,500,000,000 years experimenting with death. 5 of these experiments we have just examined. The rest are still waiting for their researchers, and something suggests that the most amazing loopholes have not yet been found.